You're listening to the weekly Parsha Podcast with Ari Goldwag, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramat Beit Shemesh, Israel 5779, 2019. This week's Parsha is Parshas Shlach in Chutz La'aretz, and that's the Parsha we're going to speak about. And I'd like to share with you a thought, a chiddush, that I had on Shavuos as I was walking to learn with my son Moshe Dov. I'd like to share with you a beautiful idea which is based on a concept in the Mesilas Yesharim, which is brought from the Medrash, a concept which is brought by Reb Chaim Friedlander, and I think a very deep and important idea which we need to understand in our service of Hashem, in our avodas Hashem, every time that we strive to grow higher. There's always something there that's going to block us. We need to understand that it's true, and we need to understand how to overcome that. Okay? In our Parsha, we have the sin of the spies, the Meraglim, which was a terribly unfortunate event which took place. They returned, they said their dibara, they said their negative report about Eretz Yisrael on the 9th of Av. They left on the first day of Sivan, which is coming up. The first day of Tammuz, which is coming right up. It's Art Kufa, it's this time of year, and I want to understand what was the depth of the sin, and I want to understand why did it happen? And it's something that we've spoken about in the past, but I wanted to bring a new light, a deeper insight perhaps into this idea. And we find that our Chazal say, the Mesilas Yesharim brings a medrash that says that what caused the spies to sin? We know that they were Anoshim, they were important people, they were Nesiim of each tribe. Obviously, if we had Yoshua and Kalev, who were tremendous tzaddikim, tremendous righteous individuals, other people were also on their level in some way, shape, or form. And yet, when they came into Eretz Yisrael, they saw only negative. They saw all the negative things, and they spun all of those negative things so that Am Yisrael would not come into Eretz Yisrael. They didn't want the Jewish people to enter into the land of Israel. And the question is why? Why were they biased? What was the bias that underlied all of that which they saw? Yoshua and Kalev were able to see the fact that the people were dying there, the great ones were dying there as a diversion, as a distraction, so that the people there wouldn't notice them. But the other 10 spies, they saw it as something negative. This is a land, Achelis Yoshvea. They said these negative words about the land of Israel. It's a land that eats up its inhabitants. What was the idea? Why did they make a mistake? What was the mistake? And our Chazal tell us, the Medrash says that the mistake happened because they knew that when they would come into Eretz Yisrael, when they would come into the land of Israel, they would lose their positions of greatness. They would lose their nesius. They would lose their leadership. They had that leadership now because they were in the Midbar. For some reason, it was only in the Midbar and it wasn't going to be in the land of Israel. Because they were afraid to lose their positions, they preferred that the people of Israel stay in the wilderness, in the Midbar. As a result, everywhere they went, they saw negative things. Why? It was because of the bias that was inside of them that created that negativity, because they're in their heart of hearts, they didn't want to enter the land of Israel. That's the Medrash Mesilas Yesharim brings. And the question that always bothers me whenever we come to this parsha is, what does that mean? Why did they think? What made them assume or believe that they would lose their position when they got into the land of Israel? When they came to the land of Israel, they were Nesiim before, they were tzaddikim, they were good people. If they would be useful to Am Yisrael, if they would be useful as leaders, certainly they would continue to be leaders. Why did they assume, or why did they think that they could lose their position of power as a result of coming into the land of Israel, to such an extent that they would be so negatively biased towards the land of Israel, to everything that they would see in the land of Israel? That's the question. That's what I want to understand, the foundation. Now, put that question on hold for a moment, because I want to ask a different question, which isn't so nogea to us right now, because we're not in that kufa, but the question is an important question, and it very much is connected to exactly what we just spoke about, the question we just spoke about. We find that between Pesach and Shavuos, that's the time that we have the build-up, the counting, the Sfiras HaOmer, we're counting from Pesach until Shavuos, from Passover until Shavuos, we're counting up to the receiving of the Torah. Now, although it's a joyous time, it's a time of anticipation of receiving the Torah. The Jewish people left Mitzrayim. They were on their way to Har Sinai, to Mount Sinai, to receive the Torah. Despite the fact that it's a time of profound joy, profound, looking towards the positive, looking towards the receiving of the Torah. Nevertheless, we find that it's also a time where we have a certain level of avelus, it's a time where we lost 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva. They died during this time, during the Tkufa between Pesach and Shavuos. Why? If we could ask a funny question, okay, we understand, we're used to it, we don't think about it too much, but we know that there's an avelus, and we know that there's this mourning period. So we don't listen to music, we don't listen to regular music, we don't take haircuts, people don't get married in that Tkufa. What is the reason? Wouldn't it have been, Hashem had a decree on these 24,000 students that they're supposed to die. They weren't misnaig b'kavod zeh, they didn't have the proper honor for each other. But let them die during the 3 weeks when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. That was a time of sinas chinam. Beis Hamikdash was destroyed because people didn't show proper honor to each other. Let them die then. Let them die after Rosh Hashanah. Between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, there's a din. It's a time of judgment. Let them die then. What is unique or special about the Tkufa, the time period between Pesach and Shavuos, that it was specifically then that there was a judgment out against them because of their Avera, because of the sin, that they didn't properly show honor to each other. They didn't properly respect each other. What was the idea that they died specifically then? Now I want to ask another point on this, but I want to point out that this question that I'm about to ask is actually part of the answer. As is always true, whenever you have a question, the beginnings of the answer are always embedded in the question. Because the question helps us to understand something that we didn't see before. Whenever we ask a question, it always unlocks something. Because if we accept that the question is true, is a valid question, it's going to give us, if we try to understand the answer, a deeper understanding. There's a piece in Reb Chaim Friedlander, and I was looking to find it, I wasn't able to find it, but he brings down a medrash that says an amazing and interesting thing about the Tkufa, the time period between Pesach and Shavuos, between Passover and Shavuos. And that is that we know that time, between Pesach and Shavuos, is great weather. It's a time of great weather. In Eretz Yisrael, it's springtime. It's a time when, it's not too hot yet. It's not cold anymore from the winter. It's just great. It stopped raining in Eretz Yisrael. We love the rain here, but it's also nice to have a break. It stopped raining. We have this beautiful, clear period of time, of weather, wonderful weather. And our Chazal tell us an amazing thing. That period of time between Pesach and Shavuos is how the weather always was before the Mabul. Before the flood, in the times of Noach, before that flood, so all year round, that was the weather. The weather was always perfect. Okay? So what it means, what does that mean? What is Chazal trying to teach us with this idea? It's very deep and very beautiful. Chazal are teaching us that time period, somehow, on the calendar between Pesach and Shavuos, the springtime of the year, that kufa of 49 days, 50 days, it's the ideal time. It's a time of ideal weather, which indicates something deeper, because whatever we see manifest in the physical world is always a hint to something that's true in the spiritual realms. If we have perfect weather, it means that it's a perfect time. It means that time of year is a throwback. That's what Chazal are saying. It's a throwback to the times before the Mabul, right? When people used to live for thousands of years. Right, it was a time, right, we had Adam HaRishon, right, that was the ideal state where they lived forever. There was not supposed to be any death. Okay, then we had, things went down. He only lived to be 930 years old. Not too shabby, right? They lived in those times to be in their 900s. And as the generations went, and specifically there was a turnover in the time of Noach. After that, people started living much less. Avraham Avinu only lived to be 175, right? Yitzchak lived to be only 180. Moshe Rabbeinu, by his time already, they only lived to be 120, And so on through the time until we get to David HaMelech says, people live 70, 80 years if they're strong, which is where we find ourselves today, right? So we had a degeneration as the generations passed, right? We had a lowering, but there's a time on the calendar which is a throwback to the way it used to be. There's something special. Can you imagine if all year round the weather would be that way? We would live much longer, perhaps, right? But the idea is that things are in a more perfected state. Things are in a more perfected state during that time. During the time between Pesach and Shavuos, we have something which was unaffected, let us say, by the flood. Now, this leads me to a question, because if this is a special spiritual time that makes you live longer, wouldn't that be an inappropriate time for Rabbi Akiva, for his students to die? I mean, the very fact that the Torah is given that the Jewish people are taken out of Mitzrayim, the Geula happens during that Kufa, during that time period from Pesach to Shavuos. They're traveling and they're on their way to receive the Torah. That indicates this very idea that this is an extra spiritual time. It's a deeper time of deeper spirituality. It's a place which is unaffected by the sins of the Dor HaMabul that needed to be destroyed, because that's a remnant from that time. What's the idea? What's the understanding that in that time the students of Rabbi Akiva died? Also, I want to point out something else which is very interesting. Chazal say, our sages teach us, that there was one location in the world, one special location in the world, which was not affected physically. We had the space and time which was not affected by the Mabul, by the flood. And now we have a location in the world which was also not affected by the flood. And that's the land of Israel. Eretz Yisrael has a very specific, beautiful advantage over every other place in the entire world. It's a location in the world where it was not affected by the flood. What exactly does that mean? Did the waters not come onto Eretz Yisrael? That's a whole discussion. It's a Gemara, I believe, somewhere in Shas. I think it's in Rosh Hashanah. So the question is, what is the idea that Eretz Yisrael is not affected by the flood? What is the idea that this time period is not affected by the flood? And why is it that that time period is when the students of Rabbi Akiva died? Why is it important to understand that these two ideas are connected? It's clear that they're connected, because what does that have to do with us, with our Parsha? It's powerfully connected. The spies came into Eretz Yisrael, and they had never been in Eretz Yisrael. They had never been in the land of Israel. They had only existed in exile. They only lived in Mitzrayim, in Egypt. They only lived in the wilderness during the time that they were in the wilderness. They had never come into Eretz Yisrael, and as soon as they came into Eretz Yisrael, something switched. Something changed. Something changed for them. They recognized that there's something different here. They saw that there was something going on, people dying, and all of a sudden, something clicked. We're going to lose our positions of power. Why? Excuse me. Why are they going to lose their positions of power? Now hear this. This is an amazing thing. This is an amazing yesod. An amazing, powerful yesod that's so important for every one of us to understand, because it happens to every single one of us. Any place, any physical place, and any spiritual place, any place in time which is unaffected, so to speak, by the flood, what happens? What happens in the land of Israel? Why is it so holy? And what are the results of the fact that it's holy? What is the result of the fact that this time period between Pesach and Shavuos is on a higher level? It's on a higher spiritual plane. The result is that in that place there's more din. In that place there's more judgment. In order to access a higher level of spirituality, in order to be in a place which is more spiritual, in order to exist within a time which is more spiritual, there's a higher demand. There's a greater demand on the person in order to be in that place or to exist in that time. We see this to be true. It's brought down, the Meforshim say, I believe it's the Ramban, in Parsha Aharon. It speaks about the fact that Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, so we had the Canaanite nations It's true also about the actually, I think the Ramban is actually by the story of Sodom and Amorah, where those people were incredibly immoral. They were involved in all kinds of behaviors that were inappropriate, specifically homosexual behavior, which the Torah calls a to'eva, an abomination. But in Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, why did they have to be destroyed, the people of Sodom and Amorah, for this behavior and for their unwillingness to give charity, etc.? Why did they have to be destroyed because of that? Why are the 7 nations, they have to be destroyed, and Am Yisrael has to come in and live here in Eretz Yisrael and keep the Torah and the mitzvahs in Eretz Yisrael? It's different here. Right? Moshe Rabbeinu wished that he could come into Eretz Yisrael, to the land of Israel. Why? He wished that he could come here in order to be able to fulfill the special mitzvahs that are dependent on Eretz Yisrael. There are certain commandments that can only be kept in the land of Israel. What is the idea? The idea is that when you come into a place of greater kedusha, of greater holiness, when you're striving for a greater level of holiness, there's greater din, there's greater judgment. A person has to be on a higher level in order to exist in that higher space. That's the yesod. That's the foundational concept. That's the idea here. As soon as those spies came into Eretz Yisrael, it's an amazing thing. When Moshe Rabbeinu sends them in, so it says that Moshe Rabbeinu called Hosea, which was Yoshua's original name, he called him Yehoshua. Why? He needed extra help not to fall into the plan of the spies. Kalev runs to Hebron. He davens by the Kvarim, by the graves of our great forefathers, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Leah, right? He davens there. Why? Why does he pray? He says that he shouldn't be pulled in. Well, why would he be pulled in? What would cause him to be pulled in? And the answer is that what happens when a person comes to Eretz Yisrael, and this is true until today, when a person comes into Eretz Yisrael, there's a different standard. There's a different thing that's going on here. There's a different way of living here. There's a higher spirituality that's demanded of the human being, of the Jew, of the Yid who lives in Eretz Yisrael. There's a higher expectation for those who are B'nai Torah, those who are sitting inside of the Eretz Yisrael of Chutz La'aretz, which is the Beis Medrash. There's a higher requirement. There's a higher level, a higher demand is asked of anyone who steps into this place. Wants to live in Eretz Yisrael, wants to live in the land of Israel, wants to live a true life of Torah, a true life of a ben Torah. It's a higher demand. It's also true within time. From Pesach until Shavuos, it's a time of excitement and anticipation to receive the Torah. It's a time when we are being called into a higher spiritual realm. And as a result of that, it's a time of din. It's a time where we have to work on our midos. It's a time when we have to work on our ben adam lechavero. It's not just that Rabbi Akiva's students died during that time, and what does that have to do with me? No, it's something that has to do with me, not just because of them, but because it's a special time where we're in a higher and elevated spiritual time. It's a time of receiving the Torah. It requires a higher level of us, and it required a higher level of the students of Rabbi Akiva. It was dafka in that time. The time that was a throwback to pre-Mabul. It retained a spiritual dimension until this very day, which is reflected in the weather of that time. But it's a manifestation of the higher spiritual level. And a higher spiritual level requires a higher spiritual level. That the person maintain a higher spiritual level. And it's for that reason that the students of Rabbi Akiva died in that time. Now, when the spies came into Eretz Yisrael, all of a sudden they immediately sensed something's different here. If we come in here, we're going to be judged differently. We're not on that level. They immediately saw that something more would be required of them. They would lose their nesius. They sensed that if they would remain the people who they were, if they would remain on that level, they would not be considered chashuv. They would not be considered important in the land of Israel. They would lose their level. They would lose that greatness. And so as soon as everywhere they went, they just saw negativity. Why? Because there was din. That's what happens when a person is afraid of living on a higher spiritual level. So he's drawn back. There's tremendous resistance. How can I do? I can't accomplish that. I can't do that. I can't be on that level. I can't maintain that higher level of spirituality. And that's true in every one of our lives. Whenever we want to climb to a new level in spirituality, whether it's in bitachon, in our trust of Hashem, whether it's in our Torah learning, whether it's in how much time we dedicate to Torah learning, to the Beis Medrash, whether it's working on our midos, whether it's developing our character traits in our Binah L'Chaverei, whether it's entering a new state perhaps of marriage, whether it's having a child, all of these things are involving a new spiritual level, a higher level. And whenever we try to get into a higher level, there's a din, there's a judgment, there's resistance that pulls us down and makes us think, no way, I can't get there. But here's the amazing thing. Here's the coolest thing that comes out of this entire discussion. And that is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent Am Yisrael, and he prepared them for this land of Israel, and he said, you're going to go in there, just as Kalev said, Aloi Na'aleh, we can go up and we can get in there. Why? Because we can have Siyata D'Shmaya. The spies were not incorrect. The spies, I don't want to say that they were right, but they were not incorrect, that it's an Eretz Acheles Yishveh. It's a land which potentially, if we are not holding on that higher level, if we are not ready to stand up and become greater, we could get lost here in Eretz Yisrael. It's a place that it's a greater challenge to live on that higher level. But Hashem says, Allah, but Kalev says, and Hashem echoes that in the Torah, Aloi Na'aleh, we can go up. We can get it. Why? Because Hashem will be with us. If we want it and we don't give in to negativity, we can have whatever we want. We can have any spiritual level that we want. The only thing to be afraid of is being afraid. The only thing to fear is fear itself. The only thing that holds us back from that higher spiritual level is the fear that I won't be able to maintain that spiritual level. But Hashem promises us, if you want it, I will give it to you. I will help you. I will give you the Siyata D'Shmaya. Our sages says Gemara in Sukkah. At the end of Sukkah, there's a whole discussion about the Yetzer Hara. The Gemara says every single day the Yetzer Hara rises up against a person to kill him. We have something inside of us. It's the same. It's that din. It's that resistance that wants to destroy us. Doesn't want us to grow in ruchnius. Doesn't want us to grow in spirituality, in our relationship with Hashem, with our relationship with others, with our relationship with ourselves. And Hashem says, if not for the fact that Hashem is helping us, we would not ever succeed against our Yetzer Hara, against our evil inclination. But there's a promise. If you ask Hashem for help, if you believe Hashem will help you, He will help you. He will help you. You can come to Eretz Yisrael. You can move in here. You can be on that higher level. You will remain a Nasi. You the spy who thinks that I can't do it, you will be able to do it. There's a promise. If you really want it, Hashem will help you. You want to live in that time between Pesach and Shavuos to receive the Torah. You know how you do it? Believe that you can do it. Believe that Hashem will help you do it. You want to know how you can have bitachon? You can trust in Hashem. You can reach that level where Hashem gives you whatever you need, whatever you want. Just believe that He's going to do it for you because He promises that He will. Whoever trusts in Hashem, Hashem will be his trust. Hashem will be the one that he can lean on. It's an amazing thing. Yisoid, bottom line, every time that we walk in and we want to rise to a new level, there will be resistance. All we need to do is trust in Hashem. Believe, be positive, optimistic, don't give in to the negativity. Believe that Hashem is going to help, and Hashem will help. I want to bless you and ask you to bless me. Hashem should help us to take the opportunities to live in a higher realm, a realm that's untainted, untouched. Hashem should help us to take those opportunities. Hashem should help us recognize that there's going to be difficulties, there's going to be resistance, there's going to be judgment, but that we can get through it with Hashem's help. Hashem should give us that help and help us to see that He's helping us. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos. This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.